If the fate of an empire could hinge on a single 5-minute window, what might history have looked like differently? On the morning of June 4th, 1942, at exactly 10:25, the Pacific shimmered with smoke and fire. 3 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, burned fiercely as sailors leapt into the churning, flame-slicked waters. Only days earlier, Tokyo had dismissed America as weak, slow, and broken, a defeated giant incapable of mounting a serious challenge. Yet far across the ocean, in a small, windowless basement on Oahu, a handful of men, hunched over pencils and codebooks, had already uncovered Japan's most guarded secret. They knew the target Midway. They understood the trap, and they were ready. In those critical moments, clarity, courage, and sacrifice collided with arrogance and hubris, reshaping the course of the war. In just 5 minutes, the world changed forever. By early 1942, Japan seemed unstoppable. From Singapore to Burma, its imperial flag flew over conquered territories, a symbol of an empire that had moved faster, struck harder, and appeared invincible. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor and a man who had studied at Harvard, had long warned that America's industrial might could turn rivers into conveyor belts, capable of overwhelming even the most formidable fleet. His warnings, however, were drowned by the triumphalism that swept through Tokyo. Japan prepared to strike Midway, a coral atoll guarding the gateway to Hawaii. In Tokyo, planners envisioned a final, decisive blow that would crush American resistance. Across the Pacific, in the United States, planners saw opportunity, a chance not just to respond, but to strike first, to turn the tide. The spring of 1942 marked the apex of Japanese power. In a mere 6 months, Japanese forces had captured Singapore, swept through the Philippines, seized the Dutch East Indies, and pushed across Burma. To the world outside, the empire seemed invincible. Newspapers in Tokyo spoke of destiny. Military leaders became convinced that their momentum was inevitable. Within the Naval High Command, an insidious mindset emerged: victory disease. It was the arrogance of success, so constant and unbroken that caution was dismissed as cowardice, and warning signs were treated as flaws. Commanders like Minoru Genda, the architect of Pearl Harbor, insisted that the United States lacked the spirit for a prolonged war at sea. Critics of the Japanese plans were silenced, dismissed as weak or overly cautious. Yet Yamamoto understood the danger. Having studied in Washington and witnessed America's industrial strength firsthand, he knew that initial victories could deceive. He had told his superiors that the empire could run unchecked for 6 months, after which the balance could shift. By May 1942, those 6 months had passed. Yet Tokyo's fevered ambition demanded one more decisive strike, one blow so crushing that it might compel the United States to sue for peace. Midway, a tiny coral atoll in the vast Pacific, became the target. On paper, the Japanese plan was flawless. They believed only 2 American carriers remained, the Enterprise and Hornet, and that the Yorktown, damaged in the Coral Sea, would be out of action for months. Japan saw weakness everywhere and expected a swift, uncontested victory. But they did not anticipate America's capacity to rise, adapt, and strike with precision across the ocean. In a dim, windowless basement known as Station Hypo, a small team of cryptographers and intelligence officers worked tirelessly. Commander Joseph Rocheford led them, surrounded by walls covered in strips of intercepted messages, notes scrawled on yellowing paper, and frequency charts mapping Japan's communications. Their task was painstaking, unglamorous, and critically important: decipher the Japanese naval code JN-25. The Japanese believed their cipher impenetrable. Yet piece by piece, word by word, Hypo revealed the contours of an impending operation. Among intercepted messages, one phrase stood out, a target referred to only as AF. In Washington, some feared this meant Hawaii or even the American West Coast. Rocheford disagreed. He was convinced AF meant Midway. He needed proof, a clear, undeniable confirmation that would convince even the most skeptical superiors. Rocheford devised a bold and daring plan. Midway would send an open radio message reporting a failure in its desalination system, a shortage of fresh water. Days later, Japanese transmissions confirmed that AF was short of water. The riddle was solved. AF was Midway. With this intelligence, Admiral Chester Nimitz could act decisively. He ordered Enterprise and Hornet to sail immediately and rushed Yorktown out of dry dock. In a remarkable feat of engineering and speed, Yorktown was repaired in just 3 days and joined the fleet at a location northeast of Midway, a sector Nimitz named Point Luck. Hidden from Japanese eyes, the U.S. carriers lay in wait. Japan believed it had set a trap. In reality, the Americans had rewritten the stage. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, the U.S. would not merely respond. They would dictate the terms of engagement. Before dawn on June 4th, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo issued the order. 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, turned into the wind. 108 aircraft roared skyward, bound for Midway. Their mission was straightforward yet ruthless: destroy the island's air defenses and prepare for invasion. At 6:30 a.m., bombs rained down on runways and fuel stores. Hangars ignited, flames licking across aircraft lined wingtip to wingtip. Yet Midway's defenders fought back. Marine pilots, flying outdated fighters, clawed their way into the sky. Anti-aircraft gunners filled the air with clouds of black bursts, answering fire with fire. Midway, battered, endured. A message from the strike leader confirmed the island's resilience. Midway requires another attack. This single report shattered Nagumo's carefully orchestrated plan. Reserve aircraft below deck were armed with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs, ready to strike enemy ships if they appeared. Striking Midway again required stripping the ordnance, replacing it with land bombs and refueling, all while waves of returning planes exhausted from combat circled above. Nagumo faced a brutal dilemma: continue arming for ships and risk leaving Midway intact, or rearm for land attacks and risk disaster on his decks crowded with fuel, bombs, and men. He chose the latter. Chaos erupted below decks. Bomb carts screeched, fuel hoses twisted across the floors, and crews wrestled with half-reloaded ordnance as the first wave of aircraft returned, low on fuel. Japanese doctrine demanded empty decks for recovery. Elevators jammed, fuel vapors hung thick, and pilots circled in anticipation. Then disaster compounded. A delayed scout plane reported American ships nearby, including a carrier. Orders reversed again. Torpedoes were hauled back up, bombs lowered below. The decks became a labyrinth of steel, fuel, and explosives. The fleet, designed for precision and timing, was now paralyzed by confusion. In carrier warfare, every minute mattered. By 9:20 a.m., the first American torpedo squadron found the enemy. They came low and slow, flying obsolete TBD devastators against a sea of Zero fighters. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, leading Torpedo Squadron 8 from Hornet, had told his men before takeoff, even if only one survives, it must attack. Over the endless blue near Midway, that vow became reality. Japanese fighters dove like hawks, cannon fire shredded fragile wings, and devastators erupted into flames or spiraled into the sea. One by one, the planes fell, leaving only Ensign George Gay alive to tell the tale. Soon after, torpedo squadrons from Enterprise and Yorktown pressed forward. Anti-aircraft fire thudded through the air. Carriers twisted violently to evade the incoming attack. The devastators pressed relentlessly, yet most were destroyed or missed entirely. From Japanese bridges, it appeared to be a decisive victory. But appearances were deceptive. These torpedo assaults had drawn fighters down, drained fuel, and left the skies above thinly defended. This sacrifice, measured not in hits, but in time, opened a fleeting window, 5 minutes that would alter the course of history. High above, Commander Wade McCluskey of Enterprise made a critical decision. His fuel was low, but he spotted a lone Japanese destroyer and followed its wake. Out of the haze, the enemy carriers appeared, spread across the Pacific like targets on a range. At 10:20 a.m., McCluskey signaled the dive bombers. Dozens of SPD Dauntless planes rolled into steep dives, sunlight flashing across wings as they screamed downward. Below, Japanese decks were crowded with fueled and armed planes, hangars crammed with bombs, and fighters drawn low by the torpedo assaults. Kaga was the first to succumb. Bombs tore through her decks, igniting firestorms that raced through aircraft lined wingtip to wingtip. Moments later, Akagi fell to a precise bomb, triggering devastating secondary explosions. Soryu was next, her forward hangar instantly engulfed. In just 5 minutes, 3 proud carriers, the same ships that had attacked Pearl Harbor, were mortally wounded. From their bridges, disbelief turned to horror. The ocean boiled with smoke and fire. For Japan, the decisive victory they had sought evaporated. For the United States, 5 minutes had changed everything. Hiryu remained. Under Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, crews readied planes for a desperate counterstrike. Morning was impossible. Orders were sharp and urgent. Dive bombers and torpedo planes fueled and pushed onto the deck. Yamaguchi's resolve never wavered. If there was a chance to retaliate, he would seize it. Just after noon, Hiryu's first strike located Yorktown. Bombs tore through her decks, smoke-filling compartments. For a brief moment, Yorktown seemed doomed. Yet American damage control crews acted swiftly, restoring her to fighting condition within an hour. Hiryu launched a second wave, torpedo planes this time. They broke through the American screen and struck true. 2 torpedoes hit Yorktown, flooding compartments and crippling power. By late afternoon, the order was given to abandon ship. Yorktown, survivor of the Coral Sea, had now been mortally wounded. Yet the reprieve was brief. American scouts had already pinpointed Hiryu's position. Dauntless bombers from Enterprise dove through clouds, striking with devastating accuracy. Fires raged uncontrolled. Yamaguchi refused evacuation, choosing to die alongside his ship. By nightfall, Hiryu was lost. Japan had entered the day with 4 carriers. By sunset, all 4 lay destroyed. By dawn on June 5th, the Pacific had been irrevocably transformed. 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, rested at the bottom, along with over 300 aircraft and countless experienced aviators. Years of painstaking preparation had vanished in a single day. The loss extended beyond ships. Japan's elite naval aviators, honed through rigorous training, had been wiped out in a single strike. For the United States, the losses were severe but sustainable. Yorktown was gone, yet Enterprise and Hornet survived. American shipyards and factories churned relentlessly, outpacing Japanese production. Monthly new carriers and planes emerged. Fresh pilots graduated in numbers that Japan could not match. Strategically, initiative shifted. Japan could no longer launch grand offensives. It faced the grim reality of defending a sprawling empire. The United States, once cornered, now chose where and when to strike. 2 months later, Marines landed on Guadalcanal, beginning a relentless campaign that would grind Japan down. Midway did not end the war, but it ended Japan's hope for swift, decisive victory. From that day forward, time itself became America's ally and Japan's enemy. The Battle of Midway was more than a clash of steel and fire. It was a lesson etched in sacrifice, courage, and intelligence. In just 5 minutes, 3 carriers were lost. By nightfall, a 4th joined them. An empire that had mistaken victory for habit discovered that history keeps its own clock. Midway revealed 3 truths. Arrogance can blind even the mightiest. In carrier warfare, minutes can outweigh months. And ships can be replaced, but generations of elite aviators cannot. These lessons reshaped the war and the world. From that day, initiative passed to the United States. Guadalcanal tested American endurance 2 months later. 2 years later, in the Marianas, new Essex-class carriers unleashed waves of trained pilots against inexperienced Japanese rookies. By 1945, the empire that had once struck Pearl Harbor faced collapse. Midway remains one of World War II's pivotal moments. It proved intelligence could be as deadly as bombs, courage as decisive as firepower, and that the human spirit, above all, is the ultimate weapon in war. Today, Midway echoes quietly, a warning against pride, a call to humility. and a reminder that the peace we enjoy was forged at tremendous cost. The story of Midway is not just a chapter in World War II. It is a testament to sacrifice, ingenuity, and the enduring power of human resolve.